Good morning, everyone. I'm Bradley with West Virginia American Water, and happy Earth Week. We are so thrilled. This year we decided, typically we have our teams out across the state each year on Earth Day, which is one day doing community events and programming within the communities that we serve. And so this year we decided, why not expand it to an entire week? And so we have focused all of our efforts this week on giving back to the communities that we serve, educating our customers and external stakeholders, and now students across the state about protecting our drinking water supply and how you can, help us to take care of our watersheds and keep our source water protected. And so with that, I do want to go over really quickly just a housekeeping item. We are going to be doing questions and answers throughout this presentation. So if you do have a question, if you see to the right side of your screen, there's an icon at the top, or you can access that from an iPad or a phone as well. And just pop your question in. You can ask those questions anonymously if you choose to. And be sure to comment along the way where you're tuned in from, the school and your classroom, and also the county or city that you're located in, just so we know where we have folks tuned in from. So without further ado, we have a great program lined up for you today, talking about source water protection and our watersheds across West Virginia. We're focused today, we have grades 6 through 12 across all 55 counties in West Virginia. And so we're so honored to have with us Erica from the West Virginia Department of Education. And Erica, I can't say enough about our partnership and really focused in here on some of our STEAM initiatives that we're doing here this year at West Virginia American Water, and glad to have a partner in you all at the Department of Education. So without further ado, I'll let you say a few words.
Well, thank you, Bradley. It really is a pleasure to be here. And, we at the West Virginia Department of Education are committed to working with our counties and with our teachers to develop STEAM opportunities for our students. And I think one of the things that is so important for our students to understand is that STEM and STEAM are these broad areas that describe careers, but what they really are they are how we put it all together. Anybody I'm sure that works here at West Virginia American Water will talk about times throughout their days when they do all the different things we learn in school, when they do some science and some technology and some engineering and some math, and they have to make something make sense and attractive, so they throw in some arts. It's putting it all together. All of this work that we do is about putting all the things that we learn in school together into one product, one activity, one sort of event in our lives, or maybe even our career. And I think that when our communities get involved in our schools, that's when we really get to see how it all comes together. And events like this allow us to see the purpose. I think that is the most important thing when we're trying to figure out what we want to do with our lives, or what we want to do for a particular activity or something like that. It's all about what's our purpose, right? And here we're talking about source water. We know we need water. So water is definitely a purpose for us. So thank you, West Virginia American Water, for bringing this opportunity to our students. And I look forward to the presentation.
Again, thanks so much, Erica, and we're so thrilled to be partnered and working hand in hand with you and the Department of Education. And I know Erica Pauken, and I have lots of initiatives and ideas that we'd like to brainstorm with you moving forward. So thanks again, and we look forward to further developing and expanding those programs. And without further ado, I will kick it over to Erica Pauken. Erica serves as our Source Water Protection Program Manager for the state of West Virginia here at West Virginia American Water, and does a phenomenal job. And so excited for you all to hear from her about her job and what she gets to do day in and day out, and how she is working with our partners and external agencies to keep our watersheds clean and keep our source water protected. So Erica, thanks so much for doing this program with us today, and I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Bradley. I'm honored to be able to do this with you guys today and just talk all things water and environment. And I'm really honored to be able to be a person in the STEAM industry. And so By education, I'm an environmental scientist. I graduated from Marshall University. And as Bradley was saying, I currently am managing what we call our source water protection program here at West Virginia American Water. So my job is to protect the bodies of water that we use as sources for our drinking water. So that's the rivers, the streams, reservoirs, things like that, so that we can deliver clean and reliable water to your homes if you live in our service district. So, and I realize that you guys out there aren't kids, but we're going to have some fun today, hopefully just learning about some environmental issues and how they relate to your drinking water. And then I'm even going to introduce you to my friend Splash. He's a water droplet that'll explain the water treatment process in just a fun and easy to understand way. So one more time, I will mention too about the Q&A. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to interact with you. So let's start with a question. Who is West Virginia American Water? What are we talking about? So many of you probably know that we are a drinking water utility. We have been serving customers in West Virginia for a long time, 1886. So we service about 565,000 people in West Virginia in 19 counties, 365 communities, and that represents about a third of our state's population. So we operate 8 water treatment facilities, 2 wastewater facilities. We have 4,500 miles of water line or water main. We have 10,700 fire hydrants. And then our largest water treatment plant is in Charleston, West Virginia. And then we pump about an average of 27 million gallons a day from that facility. But as I said earlier, we do have facilities all across the state, 8 different specific water facilities. So let's just take a quick moment to learn a little bit about the background of water treatment and what that process looks like. And I will introduce you guys to my friend Splash.
How does drinking water get to your home?
Wow, I'm not really sure.
Probably through a series of pipes.
Pipes.
Pipes
And all that?
through pipes.
I have no clue.
I assume it comes up through the pump in the ground.
Through a filter?
Gets to a house with a pump, water pump.
Ah, nature. So beautiful and calm.
Hey, Splash, did you know that reservoirs like this are one of the places where we get our drinking water?
Wait a minute there. You don't want to drink this stuff. I'm telling you, I've been in a lot of water, including this reservoir. You know what's in there? Fish. You know what they do, right? They...
Oh, Splash, don't even go there.
You know, a lot happens to this water before we can drink it.
You're telling me? Hey, I've been cleaned up a few times.
West Virginia American Water's experts work around the clock, removing bacteria, viruses, micropollutants, and other harmful particles from the water you drink. They do such a good job that American Water often provides water service that is better than what the government requires.
The treatment process begins here, at the pumping station.
Pumps draw raw water from reservoirs, lakes, rivers, streams, wells, or underground aquifers. Water travels by pipeline from the pumping station to the treatment facility. The first step in the cleaning process removes sediment and particles from the water with the help of coagulants.
What?
Coagulants are chemicals that act like magnets. They cause particles in the water to stick together. These groups of particles are called floc.
Huh, I didn't know I had it in me.
West Virginia American Water uses 2 common processes to separate and remove floc from water. One sinks floc to the bottom of a tank. The other method pumps air into the water and floc, causing residual particles to float to the top. The separation of water and floc is called clarification. With either method, the clarification process removes most of the floc from the water. The next step? Filtration.
Whoa! Hey, watch it! Wow, can a water droplet get a bruise? Sheesh! Ow! Wow, I just got pushed through layers of activated carbon, sand, and gravel. Please tell me I'm clean.
Sorry, Splash, you're not completely out of the water. You're filtered, but you might be infected with tiny microorganisms. Don't worry, disinfection doesn't hurt. Chlorine and ozone are just two of the ways we disinfect water across the American water system.
I love chlorine. It's been disinfecting water and keeping me clean for over a century. But what's ozone?
Ozone is supercharged oxygen. These bubbles scrub and disinfect. Viruses, germs, and fungi don't stand a chance.
Whoa, hey, that tickles! Stop it already! I'm gonna wet my pants!
Hey, Splash, guess what? You're finally drinking water, ready for distribution to homes and businesses.
Are you sure? How do you know?
West Virginia American Water's certified operators and water quality specialists test and monitor water throughout the treatment process, from source to tap. In fact, we conduct thousands of tests on your drinking water.
I'm certified, verified, decontaminized, and feeling fine.
And I hope you learned a little bit about more about the treatment process. So let's jump back to the source, to the very beginning of our water treatment process. So our 8 water treatment plants are also supplied by surface water sources. So that means water that's above ground. So we treat water, as I mentioned earlier, all across the state. So we draw water from the Elk River, from the New River, as well as Bluestone Lake, and then also the Ohio River. And then we also use some reservoirs that are in Bluefield. And you can see all the pictures of all of those, some of those on the slide. So on the next slide, we'll take some time to talk a little bit about watersheds. So what is a watershed? So a watershed is the area of land where all the water that drains off of it goes to the same place, a river, a stream, a lake, or it can also be groundwater as well. So think about it like a drop of water flowing downhill. So that drop will meet up with other drops of water moving from high areas to low areas in the watershed, so forming a larger stream of water. So all that happens within a watershed. So many people are familiar with the Kanawha River that's in Charleston, which you can see on the map on the slide. So it flows into the Ohio River at the West Virginia and Ohio border. So the Kanawha River actually starts all the way in the mountains of North Carolina as the New River. So some of you may have been whitewater rafting or just hanging out with family and friends in Fayetteville. So that's the New River. So and that actually becomes the Kanawha River when it meets the Gully. So so the New River in North Carolina flows across Virginia and then West Virginia before it reaches us at the Kanawha River. And so the Elk River is also one of the major tributaries to the Kanawha River, meaning it's just a smaller river that flows into the Kanawha River. And so that is the source that we use at our Charleston plant in the Kanawha Valley area. So back to watersheds. So the water that travels over the land's surface, whether that's farms, fields, forests, lawns, or city streets, it's all on its path to the waterway, to that river or to that stream wherever it is directed towards. So the water is impacted by whatever happens in the watershed. So what that also means is that the water can carry any potential pollutants into the waters, into the rivers and streams, and even into the groundwater. So here on the next slide are some examples of pollution that can reach the water supply. So that can be fertilizers, pesticides from farms, runoff from the roads and parking lots, such as like oil or gasoline. Also, another type would be like underground storage tanks, things like that. So there's various sources of pollution that can exist in a watershed. So these can either be from natural sources, such as like minerals that leach out of soil and rock, or they can be from man-made sources like chemicals or just waste materials. So contaminants or pollution can enter water supplies by direct runoff, the contributing flow from a smaller stream or a creek that's flowing into the larger river that connects, or it can also just soak into the ground as well in order to contaminate the water supplies. So contaminant and pollution sources are often grouped into two different types of categories. So those are point sources and non-point sources. And point source pollution occurs at a specific location. So that can be a pipe or a leaking storage tank, something that is specific to a point, a location. And then non-point source pollution occurs across like a broader area that cannot be tied to any specific point or location. So examples of the non-point source are things like excess fertilizer and pesticides from farms, or your like neighborhood lawn care, things like that that flow into the street and then into the river and creeks from there. It can be waste and chemicals in stormwater or rainwater runoff. It can also be things like sediment, such as rocks and sand, things like that. So each watershed is unique and can contain just different types of pollution sources depending on what the land is being used for in that watershed. So let's move to the next slide and cover a little bit about laws that protect drinking water sources. So at the federal level, we have the Safe Drinking Water Act, and how that relates to source water is that it requires states to conduct what are called source water assessments. And then source water protection planning under the Safe Drinking Water Act is more of like a voluntary state-led effort. So here in West Virginia, in 2014, West Virginia passed what we call Senate Bill 373. So that establishes like a statewide source water protection planning requirement for utilities, as well as regulations that require above ground storage tanks, or otherwise we also call those ASTs, excuse me, those owners to coordinate with water systems that are located, like if their above ground storage tanks are located near a drinking water source, or what we call our intake, which is the pipe which we pull the water out of the rivers. So then in 2015, West Virginia Senate Bill 423 changed those original above ground storage tank rules and put some direct implications on source water protection. So just a little background there. And then on the next slide, we'll talk about protecting our drinking water supplies. So and doing that is important because it helps drinking water supplies, but it also helps the environment. And it's Earth Week, or Earth Day, Earth Week, I guess we're calling it. So so it's important, you know, to be mindful of that, and keeping streams and rivers clean just makes it safer and easier to treat the water for us, but it also helps the plants, fish, other animals that need the clean water to live in. And then it helps in terms of recreation and just ensuring that the community has a clean water body, a clean water source for so many reasons: to live, work, play, all the above. So, and water utilities have programs to protect the rivers and land where we get our supplies of water. So here at American Water in West Virginia, we develop plans to reduce the risk of spills and pollution that gets into our water supplies. So, and then I'll just go into a variety of different activities on this next slide that we do, and water utilities across the country a lot do, just to protect drinking water supplies. So one of those ways in terms of programming that we do is by understanding and managing the watershed or the land around where we pull that water we treat. So whatever rivers it is. So we identify any types of potential sources of contamination. That might be factories or chemicals that are being stored in tanks close to the rivers. things like that. And we examine and manage that information using like a GIS-based online tool. And that helps us just to know what's on site at those facilities, what type of risk is involved, and also just do some different type of modeling as well as if a spill were to occur, how long it would take for the chemicals to flow in the river to our treatment plant. So how long we might have to prepare if there were a spill. On the next slide is one of the ways that we do that, and it's called source water monitoring. So the picture on the bottom right with the blue rectangular board is one of our source water monitoring panels. And that's inside of that's one inside one of our treatment plants, but we do have those at all of our treatment plants. And so we monitor the water coming from the river into our treatment plants for things like pH, dissolved oxygen, and then just some other water quality parameters. And then if that system notices something coming from the river into the plant, or something just outside of normal, we'll say, in the water quality, then it alerts our operators to let them know that something's outside of normal so that they can identify or investigate what might be happening. So we also have some advanced lab equipment to assist in identifying just specific toxic organic chemicals or oils or gasoline, things like that that might make it into the water. Also like toxic algae called cyanotoxins or cyanobacteria, like a blue-green algae. Some of you guys have probably heard of harmful algal blooms. We also have equipment that will help us identify that. And then our newest equipment scheduled to be installed hopefully this year. We're really excited about it. It'll be at our Charleston facility. We're going to do a pilot program there. And that's going to be an in-stream monitoring buoy. It's like the one that you see on the top right, the yellow pontoon looking device. So those are going to be monitoring for water quality parameters in the river upstream from the intake as opposed to right at the intake. And on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about a really fun part of our job with protecting source water is outreach and education. So we work with community partners on solutions to source water challenges, just to sustain drinking water supplies for our current generations as well as future generations. So it's important. It's important on Earth Day, and it's important every day for us here to just sustain those water resources. So some of the events that we partake in is we had recently done a hazardous waste cleanup event where the community brought different types of hazardous waste and chemicals that they had in their homes, and were able to dispose of that in a proper manner so that it didn't reach any of the local streams or rivers. We also do different litter cleanups of picking up trash. We do school presentations similar to the one today. We also do those in person when we're able. And then we do things like tours of our water treatment plants and just helping that the community understand and just educate as to what source water protection is and why it's important. And then on the next slide, there are also things that everybody can do to protect watersheds that they live in. So just a few things. One of those is cleaning up after yourself and pets. So not littering. Trash on the ground can be carried to the nearest stream when it rains, and then it just ends up, or to the nearest storm drain, and then it just ends up in a river or stream or a lake, something like that, because of the storm drain. Pet waste, like other pollution, can run down the storm drains as well, and it spreads bacteria. So just by throwing away trash and garbage cans or recycling, cans, bottles, things like that. So that's helpful. Another thing is only flushing toilet paper down the toilet. So never flush stuff like plastic baggies or Band-Aids, just anything else down the toilet. Medicines, things that aren't biodegradable, that don't break down naturally by themselves. They damage sewers and end up littering our beaches or waters. Another one that falls into that are quote unquote flushable wipes. Those are not necessarily flushable, and they also can damage the infrastructure and sewer pipes as well. And then the last, but certainly not least, is if you see something, say something. So if you see any kinds of spills or pollution in the rivers or streams, you can tell a parent or a teacher so they can notify authorities, or There's a West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection. They have a spill hotline. So I put the number on the slide, but it's also a quick and easy Google to see what that 800 number is, West Virginia DEP spill hotline. And so you might be the first one to notice that something's wrong. So by quickly telling somebody, you could stop a situation that could hurt drinking water or the environment. So that pretty much covers source water protection in a nutshell. I will kick it back to Bradley, but before that, I just want to say Happy Earth Day, and I really appreciate your attention today. Thanks.
Thank you, Erica. What a great presentation and lots of information there for folks on how they can keep watersheds clean and source water protection at the forefront here, especially as we commemorate Earth Week. We don't have a lot of time. We do have one question that came in I wanted to ask you about, and it kind of refers to why watershed condition is so important. And if you can talk a little bit about that, and I think you kind of tied that in with ways that we can, as sort of all being citizens of planet Earth, keep our area clean and keep the rivers and the roadways clean. But why is that important? And I think you kind of have covered that, but I don't know if there's anything else you want to expand on why it's important.
Yeah, sure. So you mean just like watershed protection in general? Yeah, absolutely. So just there's a lot of different types of pollution that can reach the waters, whether that's and of course, just pollution that's entering the waters, whether it might be a drinking water intake. So our plants may be able or may not be able to treat for specific types of chemicals or things that might enter the water. So so it's important for us and just as a community as a whole, and just as users of the water to be mindful of what might be reaching the river, because it's important for us to know what's going into the water and be able to manage that and reduce any kind of risk that might be associated with that. But then also there's the flip side of watershed protection, and just realizing that we all use those water bodies for one reason or another, whether it's drinking water, brushing our teeth, and just public health, like actual water that comes out of our faucet, but we might boat, and we might be boaters or fishermen or kayakers or whatever the thing may be. We might have dogs or cats or animals that might use that water. So it's all connected, and ultimately by protecting it, whether it's for drinking water or recreation or our pets or whatever, it just benefits all of us as a whole.
Great information, Erica. Thanks so much for those additional details. And we are over time, so I will be respectful. I know folks have to switch classes and have other things to do today. So thanks so much, Erica. And again, continue to follow us on social media throughout the rest of Earth Week. We have a few more really exciting programs and activities planned. And thanks so much for joining us for Source Water Protection in the Classroom. And as always, at West Virginia American Water, it is our honor to help keep life flowing. Thanks so much and have a great day.